This is the second part of my rant on the journey of the Messenger spacecraft, the only spacecraft to have orbited Mercury as of 2019. In the previous episode, we looked at why it's difficult to orbit Mercury and the financial constraint under which the mission had to operate. This constraint turned an already difficult mission into a crazy mission. But a solution was found. It all came down to how you mix things up. The orbit, that is. Unfortunately, this turned a 2 month journey into a 6.6 years odyssey. But the reality is, you go to Mercury with the spacecraft you have, not the spacecraft you might want or wish to have at a later time. And so, our journey begins 3 August 2004. Messenger has just separated from the third stage of its launch vehicle, the Delta II Heavy. Now that it's on an indirect trajectory to Mercury, we can talk more about this trajectory in more detail. This trajectory will be trading energy for time. It's the way you trade money for time when you take Uber Pool instead of regular Uber. Our low energy route will take us once to Earth, twice to Venus, and 3 times to Mercury before we'll go into orbit around it. So after being released from the third stage of the Delta II Heavy, our destination is actually Earth again. This part of the journey takes almost exactly a year. We do a flyby of Earth on 2 August 2005. At this time, engineers were able to turn on some of the scientific instruments, of which there are 7, to take measurements and use that data to calibrate their data processing software. Gotta check these things before the big show. We got a few good pictures out of the deal. You never get tired of the good old blue marble. The moon, well, doesn't stand out enough. No. Back to the journey. As Messenger passes the Earth, its trajectory will be changed, sending it into an orbit that brings it closer to the Sun. But that's not our goal for now. What we're really aiming for is to cross paths with Venus to give it some of the energy we've been building up as we get closer to the Sun. Time for this encounter is 24 October 2006. But sometimes before this date, Messenger will perform a major course correction to put it on that trajectory. It's one of 5 major maneuvers that must be performed on the way to Mercury. They're called DSM for Deep Space Maneuvers. While we're on the way to our first flyby of Venus, I'd like to talk more about the solar panels and Sunshade on Messenger. When Messenger starts orbiting Mercury, it will get so much heat from the sunlight that if it didn't turn the solar panels away from the sun, they would be damaged. Okay, so let's see where we are with our trajectory to Mercury. So now it's 5 June 2007, and we just did our second flyby of Venus. This one is important because it not only slows us down, but it also puts us on a trajectory that will almost cross the path of Mercury on 14 June 2008. But before that date, we'll have to do another deep space maneuver to actually target Mercury. Now that we're on the direct trajectory to Mercury, let's continue our discussion of Messenger and talk about the Sunshade. The Sunshade is a 2.5 by 1.8 meter ceramic fabric attached to a titanium frame. Just look at that thing. Right after separation from the third stage of the Delta Heavy, Messenger was turned to make the Sunshade turn away from the Sun. The reason was simple. At the distance of Earth, the intensity of the sunlight is not dangerous to Messenger, so the Sunshade is not really needed. However, since it's good at protecting what's behind it from the heat, that means that things behind it will cool down from the loss of heat after a while. I mean, they'll cool down to the tune of minus 70 degrees Celsius or lower. And this is too cool for many of the subsystems to operate properly. A heater is included to warm critical subsystems and keep them within operating temperatures. This requires energy which comes from the solar panels. But since the Sunshade is not needed right after launch, it turns away from the Sun. This allows the Sun to heat up critical subsystems without the need to take energy from the solar panels for the heater, since they won't be needed. It's a good arrangement, but this arrangement can only last so long for obvious reasons. As we get closer to the Sun, Messenger will turn, making the Sunshade face the Sun and making it do what it's designed for, keeping the spacecraft cool. This is so important that every spacecraft maneuver has to work within the constraints set up by the angle of the Sunshade relative to the Sun. We don't want the incidents from the movie Sunshine to happen. So you see why the solar panel had to be movable. The sunshade must face the sun at all times, while the solar panel can't, because they would overheat. Oh, okay. So, where are we in our mission to Mercury? We're now entering the Mercury flyby phase. This is the phase where Messenger will fly by Mercury 3 times. At the furthest distance from Mercury on each flyby, Messenger will adjust its speed to match that of Mercury. Trajectory adjustments usually require fuel, but not for Messenger at this point. When we think of a solar sail, we think of a massive surface area attached to a spacecraft that's traveling far away from the sun. But what if we reverse things? A small surface attached to a spacecraft traveling close to the sun. At the distance of Mercury, the solar wind is so strong that small areas like the solar panels and sunshade gather enough sunlight to impact momentum on the spacecraft. Since the solar panels can be rotated, the orientation and speed of Messenger can be adjusted at a slow but impactful rate using the solar wind. This is how Messenger was able to adjust its trajectory during the 3 flybys of Mercury in preparation for orbital insertion. A clever idea born out of the limitation imposed by NASA's Discovery program. So, as Messenger starts to perform the orbital insertion maneuver to enter into orbit around Mercury, history is being made as we come to the conclusion of my rant. A planet that was only 45% mapped at the time when Spirit died on Mars in 2010 will finally be mapped and studied in great detail. Messenger entered orbit around Mercury on 18 March 2011. Finally, the Messenger planet can deliver its message to our Messenger. I'm Dex DFX for the Celestial Sphere.